Here is a question that sounds simple and is not. When did humans first get drunk? Most people would guess it started with farming. You grow grain, you notice it can ferment, you make beer. Somewhere around the first villages, maybe 10,000 years ago. A civilized invention, a product of settling down. That answer is wrong by about 10 million years. Because the ability to handle alcohol, to drink it without being poisoned, did not begin with humans. It did not begin with farming. It began in the body of an ape that lived long before our species existed. An ape that came down out of the trees and started eating fruit off the forest floor. Fruit that had been lying there, fruit that had begun to rot, fruit that had begun quietly to ferment. That ape is our ancestor, and the taste for alcohol it developed is still inside you right now, written into a gene you carry in every cell. You did not choose it. You were handed it across 10 million years through an unbroken chain of ancestors, and it is doing its quiet work in your body every time you take a drink. The story of human alcohol is not really a story about beer or wine or spirits at all. It is a story about a piece of biology far older than any of those things that has been shaping what we crave since before our kind existed. So the honest answer to when did humans first drink alcohol is stranger than the question. In one sense, we have been drinking for over 10 million years, since before we were human, before we were even apes as we'd recognize them. And in another sense, the first deliberate, brewed, human-made alcoholic drink shows up at least 13,000 years ago, before farming, before pottery in some places, before writing, before almost everything. There is even a serious scientific idea, genuinely debated by archaeologists, that we may have it backwards. That we did not settle down and invent farming and then, as a bonus, discover beer. That instead, the desire for beer may have been one of the reasons we started farming in the first place. This is the story of humanity's oldest relationship with a drug, one so old it is older than humanity itself. Let's start with the gene, because it's the deepest part of the story, and the strangest. In your mouth, your throat, and your stomach, there is an enzyme called ADH4. It is the very first thing that meets alcohol when you drink, the front line of your body's ability to break ethanol down into something safe. Every primate has some version of this enzyme, but not every version works well. Some primates, lemurs, baboons, have a form of ADH4 that is bad at handling alcohol. Give them a real dose of ethanol and it builds up fast. They'd get drunk quickly and stay drunk, which in the wild is a death sentence. One of the researchers put it memorably. An animal with the weak version of the enzyme would be, in his words, a cheap date. A couple of fermenting fruits and it would be reeling. And in the wild, reeling is fatal. The dizzy, slow, uncoordinated animal is exactly the animal a predator picks off first.
This one's just
So the stakes on this one tiny piece of molecular machinery were, quite literally, life and death. The difference between the good version of ADH4 and the bad one was the difference between eating well and dying young.
What's that?
For a long time, scientists assumed the good, efficient, human version of that enzyme was recent, that it appeared only when humans started fermenting food, around 9,000 years ago. It made sense. Why would you evolve a defense against alcohol before there was alcohol to drink? Then a team led by the biologist Matthew Kerrigan did something remarkable. They used a technique called paleogenetics, essentially resurrecting ancient genes. They took the ADH4 gene from 19 living primates, worked backwards down the family tree to reconstruct what the gene must have looked like at different points across 70 million years of primate history, and then physically rebuilt those ancient enzymes in the lab to test how well each one broke down alcohol. Think about how strange and clever that is. There is no fossil of an enzyme. You cannot dig up the chemistry of an animal that died 10 million years ago, but you can do something almost like time travel. Compare the same gene across many living relatives, work out mathematically what their shared ancestor's version must have been, and then actually build that ancient molecule and watch it work. It is a way of observing a change that happened long before there were any bones to record it. Reading history not from stone, but from the living code inside us. And they found something nobody expected. The very old versions, the ADH4 of our tree-dwelling ancestors 50 million years ago, were, in Kerrigan's words, stinking bad at metabolizing ethanol. But then, around 10 million years ago, a single tiny mutation appears. One change.
Wait a minute.
And that one change made the
It all
enzyme
makes
40
sense now.
times better at breaking down alcohol. 40 times. Overnight, in evolutionary terms. And here is the beautiful part. The timing lines up with something specific. 10 million years ago is roughly when our ape ancestors were coming down out of the trees and starting to spend time on the ground. And what is on the ground that isn't up in the trees? Fallen fruit. Fruit that has dropped and sat and been colonized by wild yeast. Yeast that eats the sugar and produces ethanol. Fruit on the forest floor is more fermented, more alcoholic than fruit on the branch. So picture the situation. An ape without the mutation comes down, eats a few fallen fermenting figs, and gets drunk. Fast. Its senses dull. Its balance goes. And in a world full of predators, a drunk ape on the ground is a dead ape. But an ape with the mutation can eat that same fallen fruit, process the alcohol, and stay sharp. It can safely eat food the others can't. More food, less danger. That ape survives. That ape has babies, and the gene spreads until every one of its descendants, chimps,
Yum,
gorillas,
this is
and
delicious.
us,
Oh,
carries
I wish
it.
I had some fruit.
And
Me
notice
too.
the deep
Peeling a
logic of
banana
what
now.
that means. For that ape, alcohol was not a poison to be avoided. It was a signal of food. The smell of fermentation drifting up from the forest floor meant ripe, sugar-rich fruit was down there, ready to eat, packed with energy. An animal that was drawn toward that smell, that found the taste rewarding,
told the
would
mammoth,
eat better
"I'm
and
not
survive
afraid."
better than
That's
one that
so
was
brave.
repelled by it.
Ah, good one.
So evolution
Wow.
did something with lasting consequences. It wired the reward. It made alcohol feel good, because feeling good about alcohol led our ancestors to food. That wiring is still in your head. When a drink makes you feel warm and pleased and a little bit lifted, you are feeling a 10 million year old reward that once pointed an ape toward a fallen fig. This is called the drunken monkey hypothesis. And if it's right, it means our relationship with alcohol isn't a vice we invented.
It's so smooth.
It's an adaptation we evolved. The pleasure your brain feels from alcohol may be a 10 million year old signal that once meant food. Ripe, energy-rich, safe-to-eat food on the forest floor. We didn't learn to like alcohol. We were built to seek it out, long before we were people at all. There is a darker edge to this too, and it is worth naming. If the craving for alcohol is an ancient survival instinct, a drive that once pointed our ancestors toward food they needed, then it is no wonder it can be so hard to switch off. Addiction in this light is not simply a modern failing or a weakness of will. It can be an ancient appetite, built for a world of scarce fallen fruit, now colliding with a modern world where strong alcohol is available on every corner in unlimited supply. The instinct that once saved a hungry ape can trap a modern human. The same 10 million year old wiring that made the first drink feel like life can make the 10,000th feel impossible to refuse. So the taste is ancient. But there's a difference between eating fermented fruit off the ground and deliberately making a drink to get drunk on. When did that start? For that, we go to a cave in what is now Israel, called Rakafet Cave. It was used by people we call the Natufians, hunter-gatherers who lived in the region right at the end of the Ice Age, before farming existed. And in the floor of that cave, archaeologists found something extraordinary. Stone mortars. Hollows carved into the bedrock. And in the residue left in those hollows, they found the microscopic signatures of fermentation, the traces of a wheat and barley-based brew, a kind of beer. The date? Around 13,000 years old. Let that land. This is not farmers making beer. There was no farming yet. These were hunter-gatherers, wild harvesting grain from the landscape and processing it, soaking it, letting it ferment to make an alcoholic drink. And crucially, the beer at Rakafet was found in a burial cave. This wasn't a casual drink. The evidence suggests it was tied to feasting, to ritual, to honoring the dead. The oldest brewed alcohol we know of was, like the oldest smoke, sacred. And that is a pattern worth holding on to because it keeps repeating. The oldest evidence of the powerful things humans consumed, smoke, alcohol, keeps turning up not in the rubbish of daily life, but in graves, at funerals, tied to the dead and the sacred. These were not casual indulgences at first. They were serious. They were bound up with the biggest moments a community had: death, mourning, the crossing between this world and whatever came next. The party came later. In the beginning, the drink was closer to a sacrament. And it isn't one-off. Traveled to the other side of Asia, to a site in China called Jiahu, around 9,000 years ago. There, scientists analyzing the residue inside pottery jars found the chemical fingerprints of a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and fruit, a kind of ancient mixed wine or mead. Jiahu is one of the earliest chemically confirmed alcoholic beverages in the world, and the people who made it were among the very first farmers of that region. On two different continents then, right at the dawn of settled life, humans were brewing. So the pattern is the same as it was with smoke. Different places, different ingredients. Wheat and barley here, rice and honey there. No contact between them, and the same behavior appearing independently. Take something sweet or starchy, let the yeast work on it, and drink what you get. Humans everywhere, as soon as they possibly could, started making alcohol. And that word, everywhere, is the key. This was not one clever people's invention that spread across the world by trade or conquest. It was discovered again and again independently by populations who had no contact with each other on different continents with completely different plants. When a behavior appears that many times in that many separate places, it is telling you the same thing the drunken ape told us. The drive behind it is not cultural. It is built in. Give human beings sugar, yeast, and time, and they will find their way to a drink. They always have. Which raises the big, provocative question. Here is one of the most interesting arguments in all of archaeology, and it flips our whole idea of civilization on its head. The standard story of how humans settled down goes like this. People invented farming to get food. Reliable calories, bread, porridge, grain you could store. Farming gave surplus food. Surplus food let people stay in one place. Staying in one place gave us villages, and villages gave us civilization. Bread first, everything else after. Food was the driver. But some researchers have proposed a rival idea, and it is genuinely serious. What if it wasn't bread that drove people to farm grain? What if it was beer? The argument goes like this. Wild grain is fiddly to harvest and process for food. It's a lot of work for a fairly boring result. But grain also makes something else, something that gets you drunk, that feels good, that brings people together, that is central to feasts and rituals and celebrations.
The fire is perfect tonight, and the stew
And here's the thing
smells
about
delicious.
feasting. It's socially powerful.
The
Throwing a
food
big
is
feast,
wonderful.
providing the drink,
We've had a
bringing
successful
people
hunt.
together, that builds alliances, status, community. In many early societies, the ability to host a great feast was the ability to lead.
Welcome.
So the
Have a
idea is
seat
this.
and
Maybe
join
people
us.
first started intensively harvesting and eventually planting wild grain, not because they were hungry. They were doing fine hunting and gathering, but because they wanted a reliable supply of the raw material for beer. Because the drink and the feasts it powered mattered enough to change how they lived. In this version, the desire to get together and get drunk wasn't a byproduct of civilization. It was one of the engines
Look
that
what I
built it.
found, everyone!
And this is not as far-fetched as it first sounds, once you
celebrate.
understand how central the feast is to how humans organize themselves. Long before money, before written law, before kings,
This is the best
the great
meat.
feast was the machine
You're
that
telling
ran
me.
society.
Cheers to another great
It was how a
hunt.
person built a reputation, settled a debt, sealed a marriage, made peace, showed strength. To throw a feast, you needed a surplus of food and of drink. And the drink mattered because alcohol does something around a fire that plain food cannot. It loosens people, binds them, turns a crowd of separate families into something that feels, for a night, like one people. If you wanted to hold a large gathering together, beer was not a luxury. It was social technology. Now, I want to be honest because this channel doesn't sell you certainty it doesn't have. This is a hypothesis, and it's debated. Plenty of archaeologists think food came first and beer was a happy accident that followed. The truth is probably tangled. Grain was used for both food and drink from very early on, and untangling which came first may not even be the right question. But the fact that beer before bread is a serious idea, argued in serious journals, tells you something important. It tells you that alcohol was not a trivial luxury at the edge of early human life. It was close to the center of it, powerful enough that credible scientists wonder whether it helped launch the whole project of settling down. And that connects to one of the most famous and mysterious sites on Earth. In southern Turkey, there is a place called Göbekli Tepe. It is, as far as we know, the oldest monumental structure ever built by human beings. Great carved stone pillars, some of them 5 meters tall, arranged in rings, decorated with animals, raised around 11,500 years ago. That is astonishingly old. It is thousands of years older than Stonehenge, thousands of years older than the pyramids. And it was built by people who did not yet have farming, or cities, or writing. Hunter-gatherers, hauling and carving stones the weight of cars. Stop and picture the sheer scale of it. Pillars taller than a person, some weighing many tons, quarried out of solid rock with stone tools, dragged into place, carved with foxes and boars and vultures and scorpions. And all of it done by people who owned nothing we would call technology, who did not plant a single field, who moved through the land hunting and gathering as their ancestors had for 100,000 years. To build this, they had to gather in large numbers and cooperate and keep coming back year after year to a place with no houses and no farms. That is an enormous ask. Something had to bring them and feed them and make the back-breaking work worth it. And in the giant stone tubs at the site, we find a clue to what. For our story, Göbekli Tepe holds a crucial clue. Among the ruins, archaeologists found huge stone vessels, some able to hold well over 100 liters. And in some of them, they found chemical traces consistent with fermentation. traces of beer. Think about what that implies. Here is one of the first great gathering places in human history, a site people traveled to, built together, returned to. And it looks like part of what happened there was brewing and drinking on a large scale. Enormous vats of beer at a monumental site made by people without farms. The picture that emerges is of feasting, people coming together in numbers, doing hard, collective work, and being fed and, yes, given drink to fuel it and reward it and bind them together. And that is exactly the mechanism the beer before bread idea depends on. A place like Göbekli Tepe needed a lot of people, working together, motivated to keep coming back. Great feasts with meat and grain and beer are one very good way to make that happen. Some researchers think the need to feed and water these huge cooperative gatherings, to keep the beer flowing at the feasts that built the monument, may have pushed people toward controlling grain more and more intensively, a step on the road to farming itself. Whether or not that specific chain is true, the deep point stands. At the very dawn of monumental human culture, at one of the first places people gathered in large numbers to build something bigger than themselves, there was alcohol. The drink and the coming together belong to the same moment. Wherever early humans assembled to do something momentous, it seems, they did it with a drink in hand. So let's put the whole thing together. When did humans first drink alcohol? The answer runs on 3 different clocks at once, and all 3 are true. On the deepest clock, the biological one, we have been consuming alcohol for more than 10 million years, since before we were human, since the ape that came down from the trees and ate fermenting fruit off the ground and evolved the gene that let it do so safely. The love of alcohol is not something we invented. It is something we inherited from an ancestor with a different face and the same enzyme you carry now. On the next clock, the human one, we have been deliberately brewing alcohol for at least 13,000 years, since the Natufian hunter-gatherers made beer in a burial cave before a single field had ever been planted. Making the drink is older than farming, older than pottery in some places, older than the wheel and writing and everything we usually call civilization. And on the last clock, the cultural one, alcohol has been at the center of the biggest things humans do since the very beginning. It's in the graves. It's at the feasts. It's in the giant vats at the oldest temple on Earth. It may even be tangled up in the origin of farming itself. Everywhere we look at the birth of settled human life, there is a drink being shared. Which leaves one last thought. We tend to think of drinking as one of humanity's weaknesses, a vice, a problem, a thing civilization has to manage. But look at how deep it actually runs. Older than our species, present at the first feasts and the first temples, possibly one of the reasons we built the settled world at all. Alcohol isn't something that happened to humans along the way. It has been riding with us the entire journey. From an ape on a forest floor drunk on fallen fruit, all the way to a hunter-gatherer lifting a cup of the first beer in a cave full of the dead. The thirst is that old. We didn't discover it. We were born with it. And we have been chasing it in one form or another for 10 million years. I'm long before us. The sources are in the description. Go read them. End of narration.